Welcome to EHS Round Table. Today we have our guest speaker, Cesar. If you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Cesar Fernandez. I'm currently serving as an environmental specialist here in the city of Riverside, California.
Yeah, so me and Cesar, we actually had the opportunity to work with each other at Amazon for about a year. What would you say, or a year or two?
Yeah, like 2 years.
Yeah, and then Caesar went to a different facility, and then I eventually left Amazon. We both kind of went into our own worlds when it comes to the aspect of safety. Caesar now being in a more of an environmental aspect of safety, and currently I'm in the world of construction, 1926. So just diving into it with the aspect of a environmental point of view, what does your day to day look like?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, I currently serve as an environmental specialist. However, my duties still include health and safety, but I focus more on the environmental side. So for a day to day, for me, what it looks like is I'm in charge of all the compliance regarding environmental for our company. So doing my daily inspections, making sure that our stormwater is all up to snuff with the Riverside regulations and standards. Also, our water district is very stringent, so I have to make sure that all our wastewater is being tracked. Um, it's being tested in the lab. And so essentially, my day is just reading regulation, making sure we're in compliance with those regulations and that we're in compliance with all the environmental uh, governing agencies.
Yeah, so in my time at Blue Origin, I got to have a little bit of exposure to that. So we were doing like water sampling, we were doing the little testing strips, and we were doing a lot of the air sampling with the Dragers. And anytime I was doing anything with environmental, I felt like a scientist. Like I was like, I feel so smart right now, but I definitely was not. So I think with the environmental side, it's a real like big monster that's kind of put on the back end a little bit. At least what I've experienced in my professional career in safety is you meet a lot of these people who get into EHS, and the environmental side is kind of not ignored, but it's not really a full focus concept. Was that a hard kind of transition for you?
Uh, no, not really. Just because the job prior I had, we were in a Europe based company. So in Europe, environmental is huge when it comes to HSE. And in Europe, you know, they put environmental last, so it's health, safety, environmental, as opposed to America. We have EHS, which is at the forefront. I worked for, they were heavy on environmental. So I got a lot of exposure there, and it almost felt like my career was leaning more towards environmental than it was health and safety. So when I came to this job, um, America, our regulations and standards for environmental aren't as stringent as Europe, but working within California, we're kind of up there with Europe. So it is as stressful, I would say.
Yeah, I can't even imagine just the broad scope that you have to deal with, especially being in California with all the regulations there. Um, when it comes to when you first got into safety, what was your first role, and then what would you say was your biggest takeaway from your first role in safety?
Well, my introduction to safety came through the health side. Um, Joseph mentioned earlier that we work together as on-site medical reps. So at Amazon, it's OMR for short, and we were only focused on again the health, treating first aids, uh, making sure that we're in compliance with workers' comp regulations and record keeping, and upholding HIPAA and such.
Yeah, yeah. So
That's
yeah, so I feel like my time with Amazon kind of like started my foundation with getting introduced to standards. I definitely could have learned a lot more if I had kind of thrown myself into a little bit more, but I was still so new to the world of OSHA. When you transition from being an EMT, it's hard to take a step back and learn a whole new thing because we're thinking of DCAT, BTLS, all that EMT mindset. So I'd say for my experience with Amazon, and then going out there with you too, is I built like a strong foundation in the incident investigation. Going out there with the gimbal walks and everything like that. Do you kind of have that experience as well, or?
Yeah, same. Yeah, being an OMR really exposed us to this new world of EHS. I didn't even know EHS existed before coming into
Yeah,
Amazon. And I just remember, partnering with, IPS, with the injury prevention specialists, with the safety specialists, with the HASWAys coordinators. Then I got to see, that there is a bigger picture and not just health that extends to environmental and to safety.
yeah.
And then,
Experience so far. Every time I think I know something, there's 1,000 doors behind it, and the fun part for me is that I feel like I'm a just continuous learner, and the process of not knowing something and then being able to search it up, find it, talk to people with experience about it. That aspect of OSHA and safety kind of just like it really really drives me for that. Drives my continual improvement or continuous improvement. Like
yeah, that's what I noticed when we started working with each other. I mean, you really hit the ground running when it came to OMR, and then I saw the spark in your eye once the safety specialist came in, and you started to partner with them more and try to understand that side of EHS. So I knew your goals were not just to stay as an OMR, but it was to move up the EHS ladder. And
definitely, and at the time too, it's probably horrible to say it, but I was also like, how much money do you guys make? Talking to say this was, it was way more than what I was making as a OMR. So I was like, all right, not only is it fun, but it's a little bit more pay. So definitely a little bit more stable than if I were to go back to it, like or go to an ambulance where they were going to start me off at like $14 an hour or something like that. I remember the first time I got a call back from I think it was AMR. They were like, yeah, come on over. Well, 911 and it's gonna be fun. You do these patient transfers, it's gonna be $12 an hour. We got you. Like and I think their pitch was you make it up for it, you make up for it in overtime. And I was like, well, I honestly that doesn't sound too fun for me. And then
yeah,
you were an EMT for how long?
yeah, I was at EMT for 11 years, ER tech for 3 years. It sadly, it really doesn't pay the bills. So that's why a lot of OMRs end up, or a lot of EMTs end up trying to become OMRs and then move up the ladder that way. But yeah, I remember when you were flirting with the idea of going to the ambulance, and again, glad you didn't.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, I feel like the world of safety is kind of this like hidden gem that's
Exactly.
not really tapped into too much in the world of like professionalism. You kind of hear about it here and there, especially with construction sites. Everyone knows the safety guy, but nobody really knows what the safety guy does. And it's just kind of this this untapped source of just exposure to career advancement. So far in your career, what would you say has been the most challenging aspect of safety for you?
That um, that has to be an honest answer behind that question, because it's not all pretty. Even though we love our jobs, we love what we do, it pays the bills. We're blessed to be in the positions we are. It does have a lot of struggles. When I was prior to this job that I currently have, I was an EHS engineer, serving as EHS manager. And one thing that I was never warned was the psychology behind being in EHS, because you have to be a certain way to get the buy-in from your employees, to keep your bosses happy, to keep um, operation supervisors and managers happy. So it's really hard to be one way Because if you lose this group of people, then you gain these group of people, and it really won't work. So one of the challenges is um, just balancing out being fair and being stern. Um, it very hard struggle. Some people can get it down. I had issues with it, but eventually I found the sweet spot. Another challenge would be is all the compliance. As the EHS engineer, I was expected to be in compliance with environmental, with all the other health and safety agencies and entities. And that was hard because there's so many nuanced things that get thrown at you, and you have to have an answer. And your answer better be the correct one, because you don't want to put your company out of compliance. And then here comes this agency inspecting you, and then here's a fine. And then your plant manager is looking at you like, hey, what do we even have you here for? Now we have to pay this fine. So
Yeah. Oh man, I feel that way too well. So like, for me, when it comes to the weight that you have to kind of uphold with the EHS title, most of the time, what we're doing should be done by a team of like 6 people.
yeah,
Way too often, you see one, two, if you're lucky, 3 safety personnel, and it's like the amount of work that goes even just into let's say fall protection. One part of safety, the amount of work that has to go into that, and then you open the door again, and then it's excavation safety, and then you open the door again, and it's lockout, tag out, machine guarding. Like each one of these subjects has their own mountain, their own huge thing that you have to like balance with everything. And I think the hard part for me when I first got in was understanding, how to delegate my time to, what's most urgent, what can wait, how do I find out what's urgent and what can wait. And I'm still learning that, honestly. And I'm 5 years in almost, and man, every single day I'm learning something new, and I feel like I didn't know anything the previous day. I'm like, man, how did I not know this before? How was I even doing my job without knowing what this specific thing is? And way too often I find that. Um,
I I like what you said, the delegation portion of it, because, a lot of people, they'll say, hey, or I mean, I guess the logic behind having, one, two EHS personnel on site is they'll manage. They have to delegate. They have to work with, operations managers, with the line leads or their safety committee to get those trainings done. So let's just say what you're saying, lockout, tag out, right? There's training attached to that. There's regulations, standards attached, specialized training. Then there's, inspections. Then there's, all sorts of things that just go into lockout, tag out. And sometimes you feel like a burden having to go out to these leaders and tell them, hey, you guys have to train your team members, because then you get met with pushback, because then production unfortunately takes priority in most places, even though everybody preaches safety first. But
yeah, man, that's like I'd say for me, that's also one of those experiences that it's such a humbling experience to attempt to get that buy-in, especially because I'm not really good with articulating how important something is, because I'm kind of I try to be a nice person, so I'm like, yeah, whenever you get a chance, but it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
a super important thing. So and I try my hardest not to do that. I think now. Um, I read a lot of like white papers, and I'll look at these incidents and these cases, and I'll watch videos. And I think for me, it's become a real important thing to find that balance between operations with deadlines and meeting safety compliance, and swimming in between that middle it's such a hard thing to do. But once you find it, and I really think comes with relationship, with them trusting that you know what you're doing. Essentially, when I go into situations, I never try to tell them, hey, this is how you do your job. I let them do what they need to do. They're the experts, and I let them know that
Mhm.
I'm just here to help. And if I see something, we're going to work together. We're going to try to meet in the middle to make sure that we can get this done when it needs to be done. But also, how are we going to stay in compliant? If that means working in a little bit of gray area, as long as, we're keeping everybody safe and, we're not, going out of compliance, we can get this done. And I think it's that relationship building that's like really, really that hard mountain to climb with
Yeah.
anywhere you go, especially if you're new somewhere.
Yeah, it's a give and take relationship. You know, same. I've what I've learned, and now at this new job, my EHS manager, he's more of a mentor, um, and he's really taught me that, hey, like when leadership gives you a slight opportunity, take it. So maybe they're too busy to do the training when you set it up, but if they have a little opening and it's during a time that maybe you don't want to do it or you've got something else going on, but they're giving you that little chance, take it. And it's not because they're trying to walk over you, but it's a give and take. And if they see that hey, you're willing to work with them, just like you said, you'll build a relationship of trust, and then hopefully that fruits into something positive between you and them. But that
Yeah,
that is
yeah. Most of the time it can work, but on those times that it doesn't work,
yeah.
oh man, it can be difficult when you're walking past these guys and you're like, all right, how am I going to do this today? Like, there's
Yeah.
there's there's so often I'm trying to find that balance myself of being the nice guy, but also saying, hey, come on, man, put your safety glasses on. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it,
Yeah.
it, it it's trying to find that balance because I can joke around with you. We can have like a good work relationship, and then when I have to flip that, sometimes I feel almost awkward. I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
we're cool, right? Like, like put your gloves on, please. Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
it's hard to find that teeter. But so
I, I like one thing my manager does is he has that charisma to joke around with the employees. They trust him. They laugh with him. But also he's extremely by the book. Safety is safety. So no matter if it was his wife on the line and she wasn't wearing her safety glasses, he would call her out. He would be stern with her. It doesn't matter who you are. I've seen him even call out the plant manager.
geez.
And because of that, he gains the respect that he has. So, you and I, we're pretty similar. We're not contentious people. But one thing I admire from my manager is that, he's stern. He holds down the law. And sometimes people respect that more than just being super friendly. Um, but that's something I guess I'm learning, in my journey to advance in my career. And I'm sure you're starting to learn that more. You're saying that, hey, you can call people out more now and be more stern. So
Yeah, it's definitely always an awkward experience, but it needs to be done. But so, in your career so far, what would you say has been a mistake that you made that you were just that it just lingered in your mind all day? Something that like you really it shaped how you think about processes.
um, I would say that this is an opportunity, but it was also a positive. When I left Amazon as a safety specialist and moved into my role as an EHS engineer, I kind of felt like that story, Icarus. I don't know if I'm saying the name right. The kid that flew too close to the sun melted his wings, and he came crashing down. I kind of felt that way when I was an EHS engineer. Maybe I was flying too close to the sun. Maybe I wasn't ready for an EHS engineer position. Um, but the positive that came from there was I learned so much because I had, such a heavy title. I made sure that I was dialed in on everything. And not once did I go out of compliance. If anything, the company I worked for, they were out of compliance with some other things that the other EHS personnel didn't catch. So I was able to, reel them back into compliance. But either way, again, it was something that I think I messed up on, but it became something positive at the end.
Yeah. So do you feel like it was the imposter syndrome that hit you, or
Yeah, most definitely. That's what it was, and just fighting that every day. Also, along with all the stress that comes with an EHS role. Um, and again, I don't want to sound so pessimistic. You and I, we both love our jobs. We love what we do, but it does come with its challenges.
yeah,
Um,
I definitely felt that. So when I first went to Blue Origin, you're in this area where there's rocket engines going off and there's rockets flying and there's process lines everywhere. And I'm coming from an area where our closest thing to a confined space was a utility closet. So I'm like, man, like, how, you know, am I a personality hire? What's happening here? Like, how did I get here? And it was, it's just, I think it's something that everybody deals with a little bit.
yeah,
But I think the most important thing is recognizing that you're experiencing it. So now you know exactly where you feel like you're at in your career, maybe what needs to be you know fine tuned a little bit. And for me, you were training me, as an OMR, and you were the one that was introducing me to the whole processes and everything like that. So I've seen you in action as a leader, and I can tell you, man, that you're a really really good leader. So I don't want you to ever feel like you're not.
I appreciate that.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it's funny that you say this because we've never talked about this. And I
I
remember
think we should
calling
do it.
you from Amazon when I worked at Amazon and you were at Blue Origin, and I had a presentation on confined space, and you gave me like a quick quiz on confined space,
I
and
remember
totally
that.
just
Yeah.
blew me out with how much knowledge you had of just confined space. I can only imagine the other things you were knowledgeable in. So, similar to you, when I was at Phillips, you felt like, okay, am I in over my head here at Blue Origin? But what did you do? You hit the books. You did probably a bunch of research when you were at home, and you took the trainings that you were supposed to do, and you became this solid person. Um, and so yeah, similar to me, that's what I had to do at Phillips.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, I was listening to safety webinars every single day. I was watching process safety management videos. I was like testing myself. I would call my wife and I'd be like, all right, look up some lockout tagout, because I was driving like 6 hours to work every other Monday. I was like, look up some lockout tagout questions and quiz me. Make sure they have the answers so that we both know what the answers are. And I'm confident my wife knows everything about lockout tagout right now because she's constantly testing me. And even now, I utilize ChatGPT like so much for something like that. So I'll tell ChatGPT to like give me a scenario, and I'll
uh-huh.
tell you how I'll respond as a safety professional, and then I'll give my notes, and it'll explain like a little scenario, and I'm like testing myself, be ready to have
Yeah.
these answers, and be ready to recognize these things, and it's intimidating a lot sometimes, but I think it's something that I'm like it gives me
You
a
know
little
what?
bit of confidence.
Yeah. You know what, Joseph? The other day we had a mainline burst. Maybe it was 20 feet underground, so much pressure that the water just shot up another 20 feet in the air. That's how much pressure was going through these pipes. They had to excavate maybe 20 feet around where the pipe was because they couldn't find where it broke. Because of you, I was able to identify shoring. So
Really?
this big ditch, and I walk over there and I'm kind of looking. We got a big old excavator. There's mud. There's this guy on the bottom just like shoveling out mud, no shoring at all. And I'm like, man, I remember having a conversation with Joseph regarding, something has to be done here.
Yeah, yeah.
So I said to the guy, I said, hey, can you please come out of there? I didn't really have a reason to. I just said, hey, this just doesn't look safe. Just come out of there. Brought him out. I told him, just do whatever you can on this top level, but don't go in there. I went back to my computer. I looked up, OSHA regs, found out, okay, yeah, there should be shoring. Went back to them, hey, you guys need to get shoring in here. So they called another vendor. They had shoring installed. And I'm like, dude, this all came from talking to Joseph.
Oh man, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, that literally happens to me every single day with everybody that I've worked with. Like, so for example, um, we had our crew working in a utility ground box, and it was like it recently rained and it filled up. So they were pumping out the water. It was a good amount of water, and they're just dumping it. And and I'm like, there's a creek right there. I don't know. This doesn't seem right. Like, I looked at the water. There's no sheen on it or nothing like that. But like, I
Uh,
feel like there should be some type of like, there has to be something here. I used to work with this EHS engineer. Her name was Carrie, and she was our environmental guru there. She knows everything about environmental, and it was such an experience to learn from her. And I was able to, I kind of shot her a text, and I was like, hey, this is kind of going on. Can you give me some advice? And we were able to write like a dewatering exemption form for like the city of Austin, and like it was cool because I'm like, I would have never did any of that if I
uh,
didn't have that conversation with someone who had like a little bit more knowledge than I did.
yeah.
And it made me look good because I sent a message to my manager. I was like, hey, we knocked this out. We got it. Just want to let you know I got it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
man.
but, I think something that EHS professionals need to do is leave your ego at the door. You know, we don't have all the answers to the stuff. And sometimes a random employee, they'll read some OSHA reg just for funds, and they'll teach you something. And don't get mad about it, man. Just take it as a learning, because there's so many regulations, there's so many entities that it's so hard to keep track of every single one of them. So I think it's important that we put our pride aside. Um, and if we don't know, just say we don't know. Go back to your computer, do some research, and then you'll come back, with an actual answer, and not give some fluff, hoping that you're right.
Yeah.